So everybody, this is Alex Chamberlain. Alex Chamberlain is amazing.
I'm not.
We have
Oh my
understanding
god.
cutting edge metrics, which is, I mean, those aren't oranges. Those are what, clementines. What do we got here? I'm really embarrassing myself. I'm sure clementines don't really have. Okay, what am I looking at? What are
Bowl of
these?
oranges?
They are just oranges. Oh, I thought they were like smaller though.
They might
And
be like nectarines or tangerines or something.
you didn't even say clementines. It's fine.
Clementine. Look, I don't know. I'm not a
You
fruits
know,
guy. I'm not a strong fruits guy here.
those are tangerines, says
I
Yance.
I literally
Kumquats.
just got scolded for not eating enough fruit like just last night. So,
You guys are the
um,
best. All right, go off, have a fantastic presentation. Everybody who's been,
waiting.
hopefully that those last 15 minutes are worthy of your contribution to PitchCon. So
They're
thank you so
not.
much for sticking around. I am so looking forward to this presentation. Gonna let you have it.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Yeah, okay. Um, as I gather my thoughts here, I'm like already I'm overheating. The shirt's gonna come off, and my wife's gonna be really upset. So you're gonna get a treat later. I hope that's okay, Nick. All right, let me do the whole thing where like you do the presentation. Okay, cool. Didn't do it. There. Okay, so let's see. Display settings. I do not want to see this part. Cool. Um, okay, yeah, understanding cutting edge pitching metrics. Okay, cool. Here we are. Got some tangerines in a bowl. Making the presentation. What last night, 2 nights ago, my wife was like, "You should use that one," and I was like, "Okay." So that's the story there. Are we going to actually understand cutting edge pitching metrics? I don't know. Understanding, in loose air quotes, I put some launch angle, some approach angle, maybe a couple other things. I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but we'll see. We'll see how much we learn. We'll see how much we communicate in this now truncated session, which I'm going to just rush through. Just absolutely blast through this presentation. I'm probably not going to explain things well. I'm not going to be able to follow the comments very well. Just roast me. I'll do my best to try to keep up, and I'll try to answer questions as we go. But I can't guarantee I'm actually going to do anything acceptably, remotely satisfactorily in the next 45 minutes. So let's get started. Oh, baseball. The things that you forget that you put into presentations. Oh my god. All right, table of contents. I don't know, man. We'll figure it out as we go. I promise it's more structured than this, but I just feel like you lose 13 minutes to an internet outage and all bets are off. I got my tea here. I'm probably going to spill it. I'm going to be slurping through it. Well, where do we start? Well, I think some of the more interesting developments that have happened more recently in the past couple of years, especially with the advent of Statcast data, is really understanding, I guess, like pitcher contributions to how they can control contact management. I guess like contact quality suppression might be the best way to describe it. And we've tried to capture that skill in previous ERA estimators. Fielding independent pitching, which is FIP, that uses strikeouts, walks, and then the contact element of that metric is based on fly balls, or excuse me, home runs specifically. And as we've kind of steered more predictive with ER estimators, we took FIP, we made XFIP, and XFIP replaces home runs with basically like an expected number of home runs based on the number of fly balls that a pitcher gives up. Sierra, another popular one, is kind of like it's a lot more complicated than XFIP, but still kind of gets to the same place where we're looking at a variety of different ways that we interact and kind of digest ball and play metrics for a pitcher and kind of ascribe a value to that in terms of an earned run measurement. So back in 2015, Rob Arthur, his handle on Twitter is No Little Plans. He does a lot of great research, a ton of great research. Most recently, helping to unearth very early on in 2021 that exit velocities were like 2 miles per hour higher than they were the previous season. one of the people helping, not the person, I think that's more of the astrophysicist side of things, but helping identify that there was more than one baseball used in 2021. So he's been doing a lot of great work. And in 2015, he kind of showed that that a hitter's exit velocity is 5 parts hitter, 1 part pitcher. Now that's kind of reducing that ratio probably a little too much. It's probably not that evenly split, but you get the picture. It's mostly on the hitter side of things where exit velocity is kind of controlled. A pitcher does have a little bit of influence over that, and I am going to get into that soon. So yeah, right, a couple of tangents. So if pitchers are primarily in control of EV, what does that leave? Oh, good, I got it backwards. Great start. If hitters primarily control EV, then pitchers primarily influence launch angle. Like, there's got to be some way that pitchers are using some manner of skill to influence contact quality on the hitter side. They can't only be strikeouts and walks that are the skill metrics, because otherwise that just makes no sense. Every pitcher is going to be the same at a given kind of like level of strikeouts and walks. There's got to be some way that they influence it. They do that primarily through influencing launch angle. And they do that by using pitch location. So in 2020, I wrote a post called Launch Angle, Pitch Location, and What Pitchers Can or Cannot Control. And that mostly just kind of summarized exactly what I'm saying, which is a pitcher's location, up in the zone, down in the zone, in, out, is going to be the one really good way that they can kind of affect how a hitter makes contact with the ball. Now that is kind of intuitive. I think all of us watching baseball, we're big baseball fans, know that there are ground ball pitchers that are fly ball pitchers. That's not just an accident. That's a construct of the way that they're pitching, whether it's the pitch itself or whether they're throwing it high or low in the zone, whatever. It could be a combination of the two. And also, if exit velocity is mostly pitcher, but still a little bit or mostly hitter, excuse me, but still a little bit pitcher, then how does he capture that 1 part pitcher, as Rob Arthur kind of describes in the 2015 post? It's a combination of location and stuff. And there's a lot of ways to describe stuff. I think we are going to talk about stuff in one very specific way here. And just a parenthetical, let's establish that command is very important and location is very important. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah, what's stuff? Well, a lot of stuff makes stuff. You know, but for real, stuff is like the interaction of a great many things. It's velocity, it's spin, movement, location, release point. It's a bunch of different things, but also it's how all of these things interact. And I think that last part is the most critical part. This interaction is or can be very hard to articulate and capture, and it's a lot of times it's very, very pitch specific. Like, it's going to be hard to create a model, and there are models, and we can build models for every single pitch that's been thrown and look at all of their specs and create run value metrics, or we can create pitching plus or whatever Cyrus's and Max Bay's metric at the Athletic is, and we can make discrete models that are using all this information. But I think on an individual pitch basis, all these things are interacting just ever so slightly differently, and it's kind of hard to articulate that on a pitch by pitch basis. So I like using vertical approach angle, and that's something that has become more mainstream recently. It has definitely already been at the forefront of the minds of like driveline folks, of MLB orgs, etc. People are very aware of this. I think you, the listeners, are already cognizant of VAA, whether or not you have ever even heard of it. As it shows on the slide, vertical approach angle is the angle at which a pitch approaches home plate vertically. Cool. So like as it well, let me see if I can get, as it dives across home plate or comes across home plate this way, as it crosses the front plane of home plate, that is the angle that we are measuring there. And God, the self-deprecation, I just couldn't get around it, huh? Yeah, just riveting stuff. There's also horizontal approach angle. So no matter which angle you're coming through the front plane of home plate, there's going to be an angle going down, there's going to be an angle going to the left or right, and you got the horizontal and vertical angles. You can probably combine those, a little bit of Pythagorean theorem, and get like a What's your diagonal approach angle? I don't know. I'm not going to go that far, but right, like I said, there's some folks who are already very keyed into vertical approach angle. I know scouts, like the prospecty people and scouting folks are very keyed into it too, and I know it's become a big part of player evaluation. It is primarily a function of velocity, pitch height, and release point. Technically, you calculate vertical approach angle using only velocity, but you have your various velocity vectors. You have forward, you have up, you have side to side, and then you have the acceleration. So is it slowing down? Is it, well, hopefully it's not speeding up too much at 50, halfway to home plate. But you catch my drift. You're trying to capture the exact kind of like orientation of the pitch in flight. And while you're just only using velocity vectors for that, those are all influenced by pitch height and release points. So those are like kind of like the three critical things that we're going to be looking at today. Not release point as much, but definitely pitch height and definitely velocity. So kind of jumping into, let's just get into the nitty gritty. I feel like I'm missing things. I definitely am not keeping track of the comments. So hopefully you guys aren't asking anything important. But this is a blob of kind of, like what at a certain height, you're looking at the top and bottom of a strike zone there, the two black lines. This is whiffs per swing. So we're talking about swinging strikes specifically on swings and not just on all pitches. So whiffs per swing. This is a heat map of that relative to the zone, and the x-axis is vertical approach angle. So you can see that that there's like a pretty strong correlation between vertical approach angle and height. It's almost like a diagonal line, or like a Charmander tail, or like a foxtail, or a bean. I don't know, but you can see that like when you have a flatter pitch, and a flatter pitch is going to have a shallower angle, that's going to be a lower number. So the lower numbers are going to the right. The steeper numbers, the more negative numbers are going to the left along the x-axis. You can see that they're following this pattern of higher pitch is going to be a shallower pitch, shallower VAA, and a lower pitch is going to have a steeper VAA. And I'll get to why that's a problem in a second, but let's just go through this. Pitches in the zone don't have as good of swing and miss material. You're going to get most of your whiffs on swings outside the zone. That's a little bit of a problem for pitchers, because if you're throwing secondaries, just below the zone and guys aren't swinging, you're not going to get your whiffs. You're going to walk more guys, etc. I am definitely reducing this a lot, but we're going to get more into everything more specifically. But like right here, this circle on the left is bad breaking balls. The circle on the right over here is bad fastballs. Now, what makes a bad breaking ball, or what makes a bad fastball? Cool. We'll get to that also very shortly. The squares over here are showing kind of like a window of opportunity here for flat fastballs, and we'll get to that also. CSW, this is just so Alex Fast can have his moment to shine. CSW, the worst metric ever made, absolutely ever made, is naturally better in the zone than out, because we're going to have balls outside the zone. So there's a strike ball element here. But you'd definitely rather be living outside the zone than in it, and we'll also be getting there soon. I'm not liking where this is going right now. I'm going to actually skip. Here we go. So DHERA. I'm already at the halfway point. What a nightmare. DHERA is an ERA estimator that I created that uses strikeouts, walks, and weighted on base average on contact. And this is a lot like StatCast's xERA, but instead of using actual strikeouts and walks, I want everything to reflect some manner of deserved attributes. So xWOBACON, expected weighted on base average on contact, is the primary kind of like contact quality measurement in xERA, but they use actual strikeouts and actual walks. I've replaced those with deserved strikeouts and deserved walks, and those are regressed rates based on zone rates, on contact rates, etc. That kind of gives you, and then you rescale that. You meaning me, I've rescaled that to an ERA scale, and then created a heat map around that. And red represents a high ERA, a DH ERA. Green represents a low DH ERA. And this is kind of getting closer to where we're seeing pitchers succeed, because now you're looking in the zone and there's a lot of red, but there are pockets of green where where pitchers can excel. This is where Jacob Degrom's fastball lives, generally speaking. We're going to talk a lot about Jacob Degrom's fastball. It is about as flat as a fastball as you can reasonably ask for. That is a combination of arm slot, but it's primarily primarily a function of his elite velocity. You do not have to obtain a flat fastball through only velocity. We will also get to that. We're going to get to a lot of things in a lot of places soon. But also, and I'm going to drag German Marquez today because that's his fastball. And so you can see, without really even knowing what VAA is, you can see how much of DeGrom's fastball shape kind of coasting through a little bit of a red spot in the zone, but also a green spot thanks to the flatness of his fastball. Whereas German Marquez has a very normal fastball that he throws just right in the heart of the zone. And that is possibly one of the worst places to live in terms of fastball usage. And he could probably improve that with better location. But fundamentally, German Marquez is going to struggle because the shape of his fastball is bad. And so again, we'll get to why that is, but primarily we're looking at vertical approach angle to determine why that is. So, and one last note: don't throw it in the dirt. It looks like it's good to throw it in the dirt, but I wouldn't endorse that. So again, I'm getting ahead of myself, and I was trying not to do that, but I obviously did, and I was obviously prepared for that. We have this long bubble that's correlated very strongly with pitch height, and that kind of loses information. So if I was to tell you something like Jacob Degrom's fastball was -4 degrees vertical approach angle, that's good. That's a good number, but you have no idea where in the zone that is. So a -4 degree angle, according to this blob, that's like elite if you're looking right in the middle of the zone. I'm talking about right here. So you have a -4 angle. Hopefully you can see my cursor. Yes, you can. That's elite, right in the heart of the zone. That's an elite fastball. A -4 fastball, or -4 VAA, -4 degrees VAA, excuse me, a foot above the zone is horrendous. So there's a little bit of a miscommunication there in what VAA is trying to describe. So if someone tells you, yeah, his fastball has a -4 degree VAA, you're left with asking more information about that. If that's right down the middle, like Jacob Degrom's, um, that's truly an elite fastball, regardless of the location. If that's up in the zone, that's pretty good. It's not the best, but it's pretty good. Alternatively, if you're talking about a -4 VAA, you're almost going to assume automatically that it is related to high velocity, and high velocity is helpful, but for flatness, excuse me, high velocity kind of begets a flat fastball, but that's not the only way you can get there. And Paul Sewald, who has his fans on Twitter, is certainly at Pitcher List, only throws like 92 or 93, but it's his arm slot. It's his lower arm slot that helps him flatten the fastball. And he throws one of the flattest fastballs in baseball, and his fastball is 8 miles per hour slower than Jacob Degrom's. So there are different ways of getting there, and just talking about vertical approach angle by itself will invariably lose some of that information. I just want to make that clear up front. We are still going to talk about vertical approach angle, but we are going to adjust it. We're going to adjust it for height, because height is such a critical kind of component of calculating it, that if we adjust for it ahead of time, we are already getting one step closer to what we want to talk about when we're talking about pitch shape, whether it's flat or it's steep or neither. And so when we adjust it, we get a more amorphous blob. We're talking about now vertical approach angle above average and below average. So we can say a little more concretely that, okay, Degrom's four-seamer, depending on where it is in the zone, is about 1.5 to 2.5 degrees flatter than average. That's helpful because you can say that and it can mean almost anywhere in the zone, and you have a pretty good idea of the eliteness, so to speak, of the flatness of Jacob Degrom's fastball. You can say something like he he throws an average or his vertical approach angle is average for his fastball. Good Lord, his fastball, right down the middle. You can know that no matter where it is in the zone, it's gonna be average. It's probably gonna have mediocre results based on this heat map. Again, we'll get to some of that in a little bit. But I just want to kind of like normalize this discussion of referring to vertical approach angle relative to some kind of benchmark or baseline, because I've seen discussions about vertical approach angle. I see people cite flat pitches, and I'm like, it sounds good. It sounds good that Jack Leiter's vertical approach angle is negative 3.7 degrees. Is he throwing that right down the middle? Is he living up in the zone? He is almost certainly living up in the zone because I've seen the videos. That kind of thing is like it's a combination of capturing both pitch shape and usage. So I want to get closer to talking about vertical approach angle in this way, because it's going to make doing this part of the job a lot easier. So let's just jump into it. Vertical approach angle is a function of velocity. It does not necessarily mean that it affects all pitches the same way. In fact, it almost exclusively affects fastballs. Naturally, there is some very mild effects for breaking balls or off speed pitches, but really it's very sensitive to changes in velocity, especially when you get to increased velocity. That is that's physics from a contact quality side, from a hitter reaction side. It just is, and if I could explain it better, I would. I'll try. But really, it just is. When we look at these things from a very specific pitch type perspective, and we're trying to figure out what is the most important element of a pitch, you go to a curveball, it's not going to be vertical approach angle. For a slider, nope, not VAA. Neither for a changeup. A little bit for a sinker, definitely for a fastball. Your VAA, again, a function of velocity, a function of pitch height, a function of release point, are all going to be massively important in determining the effectiveness of that pitch. Whereas something like a changeup or curveball is going to be much more location sensitive than it will be pitch shape. So those are possibly conflicting ideas. I don't think they are, but maybe they did. Maybe they sound like it when I was talking about it. But anyway, we're going to jump in. Four seamers. That's where the four seamers reside. So you can kind of see, compared to all pitches, that they're generally flatter than average. You can see this dash line going up the middle, not even the middle. Right here, this is 0 going up here. So when we compare it to all pitches, fastballs, four seamers are gonna be flatter than curves. And I bet you didn't know that. I bet you've never watched baseball, and I bet you did not know a fastball was flatter than a curveball. So looking at whiffs per swing, and again, now we've got a normalized thing that we're talking about. We do not have a weird shaped blob. We have a perfect circle in terms of talking about steeper to flatter vertical approach angles. When you have a flatter fastball, again, going left to right, you have an increasing margin for error effectively. You are going to get hitters to whiff on pitches that are lower in the zone. So instead of having a steep fastball, again, this is on the left side. You can see we're gray up here at the top of the zone and very blue throughout the zone. As we're getting flatter and flatter, we're getting grayer. We've got some orange at the top. This is denoting more whiffs per swing. So you definitely want to have a flatter fastball. Whether you're throwing it in the heart of the zone, whether you're throwing at the top of the zone, you want to have it be flatter. That's whether that's through velocity, whether that's through arm slot. I don't care. I'm not a pitcher. That's your job, not mine. That's your job. So right, you have this increasing margin for error, and I think this is kind of getting to the idea of folks talking about stuff, just relying on your stuff to beat hitters. Kind of like this premise of don't dance around the zone. Like if you've got elite stuff, just pump it like right down the middle. Like that's what Jacob Degrom does. I mean, he has one of the best fastballs in the league, possibly the best fastball, because he has the ability to just throw it middle, and a pitcher and a hitter will swing right over or right under it. I mean, that's what you can do with a fastball that has the specs of Degrom's fastball. If you're Herman Marquez, you cannot do what Degrom does. You cannot throw it middle, which is what he does, by the way. That's what Marquez does. You would want to try, if you're living here in the middle of the zone, in the middle of this blob, you don't really want to live middle. You want to go up. You want to err on the side of being up in the zone, because that's where you're going to get more whiffs per swing. The lower your pitch when it's steeper, and we're talking specifically about four seamers, the lower your pitch in the zone with a steeper four seamer, you're going to get crushed. You definitely want to air up. This is again, I'm not a pitcher, I'm not a pitching coach, but this really goes back to like this old adage of fastballs up, breaking in, and changeups down. And that's that's not a mistake, and that's not a coincidence over time. Like that's bearing out in the data that they didn't have 10, 20 years ago, or even 5 years ago. But we're definitely seeing these patterns flesh out when we look at it really granularly. Interestingly, and we don't really have an increasing margin for error, but as fastballs get flatter, we do see more swings. As not necessarily more swings, but swings start to kind of elevate in the zone. So you have, if you have a flatter fastball, you're going to get more swings up in the zone, which is a great thing to know, because if you have a flat fastball that gets a bunch of whiffs per swing, right here at the top of the zone, at this 3.5 mark, where my mouse is, and you know that you're getting more swings there, that's really the sweet spot. And that's kind of like where Freddie Peralta lives. Like Freddie Peralta has a flat fastball. Again, Paul Sewald has a flat fastball, and they're just living up in the zone. And again, pitchers do that. Justin Verlander does that. His fastball is not like Freddie Peralta's. He gives up a lot of home runs, but that is where the whiffs are found. You've got this kind of tendency to chase that flatness up in the zone, whereas these steeper pitches down in the zone are going to get more swings. That actually has kind of this like inverse effect in terms of called strikes. We have a little bit of this effect of I haven't reached it yet, but there's actually like a little bit of effect of, because the swings are chasing upward, you actually have like a nice little pocket at the bottom of the zone, and I've been harping on that. But you have a pocket at the bottom of the zone where a flat fastball is actually going to get some called strikes, and that's actually kind of like the Walker Buehler formula a little bit. Is he doesn't get a ton of whiffs, but he does get a ton of called strikes. And one of the ways he does that is kind of just like sneaking flat fastballs down at the bottom of the zone. So anyway, here is a kind of like the heat map where we're combining swinging strikes or whiffs, excuse me, and swings. You can see the heat map of all of these swinging strikes can be found at the top of the zone with fastballs that are at least average to well above average, and you can see the redness right there at the most flat of the flattest, excuse me, of fastballs. We have 18 minutes. I am going to plow through this. Again, the Degrom segment of the CSW page. Now I will talk briefly about launch angle influence, because I mentioned that up front. Up in the zone, you're going to get higher launch angles. Down in the zone, you're going to get lower launch angles. So again, we're talking about this pocket of flat fastballs at the top of the zone. They not only get more whiffs and more swings, but they're also going to get more pop-ups. And again, kind of like this tendency of hitters to chase flatter pitches higher in the zone, there's also this increasing margin for error where a flatter fastball in the middle of the zone is more likely to get a pop-up than a steeper pitch in the middle of the zone. Obviously, you want to air upward, but again, someone like Degrom, who has an elite fastball, can throw an elite fastball down the middle and still get a pop-up. That's just the magic of his pitch with that pitch shape. So really that sweet spot, again, I keep talking about the sweet spot, but it really is. I mean, you're getting the most whiffs and probably the weakest contact, still flirting with a little bit too many home runs, but getting the most pop-ups in that pocket right there. And again, I mentioned this here in this slide, that's what Justin Verlander does. He in 2020 recorded a 2.58 ERA, despite giving up 24 home runs on his four-seamer alone. But it was this kind of approach of just peppering the top of the zone, getting tons of fly balls. Tons of fly balls, reducing or resulting in some home runs, but a lot of pop-ups and a huge swinging strikes spike on his fastball itself that led to I wouldn't call it a career year, but it was certainly a fascinating year for someone who's like 35 and got like a mid-2 ERA. So bring it all back for four seamers, because again, I'm rushing now. 15 minutes left. A good four seamer is going to be flatter than average regardless of location. A bad four seamer can still be good. Location helps with that. And a great four seamer is flatter than average and located well, and typically that's located at the top of the zone. So there's a lot of moving parts here. I'm very reluctant to say that a steep vertical approach angle for a fastball is necessarily bad, because you can augment that as a pitcher. You can improve that with well, I guess you could train at like drive line and increase your velocity. You can be like Paul Sewald and change your release point. You can change your command. You can augment your approach and make sure that your location is improved, because that's something that German Marquez does not do. And I'm looking at the comments and still can't track them. So why does VAA work? I've kind of already talked about this. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I think like just kind of intuitively, like you're looking at a normal fastball shape. You are a hitter. You normally see a pitch coming in at at this particular angle most of the time. So if you are a flat pitch, if a pitcher throws a flat pitch, flatter than average, flatter than what a hitter usually sees, there is going to be a tendency to swing under it, because he is not used to seeing that kind of approach angle coming through the plate. We call this, quote, like jumping over the bat. And I think it probably does have that feeling or appearance when you're a hitter of not being able to get up to a pitch that is flatter than usual, or has more induced vertical break, is what they call that, where the spin and lift on the pitch kind of like it counter affects gravity and brings it up over the bat. That's kind of what this jumping over the bat kind of phenomenon is. But also, I think, like, again, it's just kind of it's an extreme, it's an outlier. It's a unique angle or pitch that that differentiates itself and separates itself from the pack. And so while the ball is jumping over the bat, it's doing so because it's unique, because hitters aren't seeing it all the time. There might be some give back or some take back on the hitter side if all fastballs are kind of going this direction. If all fastballs are becoming flatter and being thrown at the top of the zone, there actually might be some take back where hitters are beginning to recognize that better and beginning to cater their swings better to that. We definitely haven't seen that yet, but I would not be surprised if there's some give and take there. Sinkers, two seamers. I don't care if they're different. I don't care if you want me to separate them. I'm not going to separate them. They're the same as far as this is concerned. Sorry, don't care. But you can see that sinkers are typically less flat than four seamers. And again, we're talking about above average. So this is controlling for where it's being thrown in the zone. This is just the natural orientation, the spin, the velocity of a sinker. It just is how it is. And that is commonly why they're sinkers, because they sink and they have a steeper vertical approach angles than four seam fastballs. So that is a great way to kind of like vindicate that and validate that nomenclature. But primarily, just because they're both fastballs doesn't mean they can't be deployed the same way. So there is kind of the similar. Excuse me, throat's getting a little dry here. There's a similar kind of phenomenon where there are more whiffs per swing at the top of the zone for a fastball, and this is kind of like a function of velocity. Sinkers are still fastballs, different shape than a four seamer, but if you wanted to get more whiffs, you're going to find them at the top of the zone, or I assume with a steep one at the very bottom of the zone. But and again, kind of like the same kind of pattern with increasing swings up in the zone and decreasing or increasing down for steep. It's just kind of the same pattern as a four seamer. You just don't see the same margin for error. I don't know if you recall that we had these red bands started much narrower at the base of the zone. I'm sorry, not the base of the zone, but at the steepest pitches, and it got broader as we looked at the flattest pitches on the far right. We're not getting that same kind of margin for error. It's the same through and through. It's really just a different pattern of where swings are being found based on the flatness of a pitch. And I think, again, that's, a flatter pitch is going to give that kind of that illusion of rising up, and hitters are going to chase that higher up in the zone, all else equal. Not really interested in the LA influence, launch angle influence part of this. We know that sinkers are kind of like ground ball pitches. They're obviously typically located down in the zone. We see that phenomenon here. But I do want to point out that, again, all else equal for pitch height, if you're throwing a steeper sinker, you have a larger margin for error for getting those ground balls. Just like for four-seamers, where if you have a flat four-seamer, you can throw it down the middle and get a pop-up. For a sinker, you get a steep sinker down the middle. You have a better chance at a grounder than a flat sinker down the middle. So really, at this point, we're talking about playing into extremes. Four-seamers playing into flatness, sinkers playing into steepness. That's where you're finding kind of like the best pockets of effectiveness. This graphic sucks. I meant to redo it. I forgot to. But if I had done it correctly and it was cute and green and red like a watermelon, you'd see a nice pocket of green down here at the bottom of the zone. And again, that is where you find the most whiffs for sinkers. You find the most swings for sinkers, and you find the most ground balls. So we're working at polar opposites. We have the flat fastballs up, the steep sinkers down. Again, not claiming to break any new ground here, because I think this is very intuitive and things that have been taught for a long time, but really bearing out in the data and really emphasizing the importance of keying in on those things. And it's not just throwing your sinker at the bottom of the zone. It's really crafting your pitch shape to get as steep as possible while still coming in at the knees or whatever. Like that really is the key. It's not just about getting it into a certain spot. It's not just about changing the shape by itself. There definitely is an interaction between the two where you see, the strongest results for a pitcher by having as steep of a sinker as possible without having to throw it so low that he misses the zone. So if you're grazing the bottom of the zone with a sinker that's -6 degrees vertical approach angle, you're in business. And I already said all that. So again, but to reiterate, stuff is good, but location is really important. Being atypical is really important, or unique. And I think that's really the one thing I want to emphasize, because I'm talking a lot about vertical approach angle. I'm talking about why it's so important to be flat or steep. But again, flatness and steepness are just different ways to describe being an outlier or being extreme. And I think in its own right, if you have a really steep four-seamer or a really flat sinker, that's a unique pitch too. That's not really a direction that pitchers go. And you're going to see some interesting results there, like fewer swings, kind of like the Walker Buehler thing. He doesn't have a steep four-seamer, but he throws his four-seamer sometimes in the bottom of the zone. It just kind of feasts off, off of called strikes. Aaron Nola does this a lot. Kyle Hendricks does this a lot. Those are totally different arsenals we're talking about, totally different pitches, but different ways of deploying them strategically, knowing effectively like how heat maps look with swings and whiffs, grounders, pop-ups, whatever, and kind of nibbling, as they say, and getting some of the best results that you can with what you've got. So looking at non-fastball, here goes. I'm so hot. Good Lord. All right. My wife's gonna be so mad. No one tell her. Oh boy. Oh boy. On fastballs, not gonna spend a lot of time, because change-ups, sliders, curves, they're just really not sensitive to vertical approach angle. It just is what it is. I've looked at all the graphics. I could put them here. It's not really worth rehashing, but this is kind of fun. You're going through the colors. You can see their vertical approach angles. Changeups are kind of like average. Sliders a little steeper, and then of course curves are the steepest. So I think probably the biggest thing is you have different kind of margins for error for whiffs in the zone, with sliders being the largest and curves being the smallest. And so here's kind of an exemplification of how changeups work. You're getting all of your whiffs at the bottom of the zone. There's this big gray block in the middle of the zone, but it's perfectly flat. You're not having any kind of sensitivity to pitch flatness. So there really is no point in looking at pitch flatness at this point. You have this zero, almost zero sensitivity through the zone, depending on the steepness or flatness of your changeup. All the whiffs are coming below the zone, and at the same time, hitters know not to swing. So there's this really interesting kind of phenomenon where changeups actually have the lowest CSW rate, called strikes plus whiffs, because while they are a high whiff pitch, they are so heavily reliant on feasting at the bottom of the zone that they are contributing to high walk rates, just lots of balls. That's why you see guys like Luis Castillo, Dallas Keuchel, Framber Valdez, Lance McCullers Jr. These guys they're like sinker changeup aficionados. They're not just only changeups or sinkers, but kind of the same premise where you're trying to chase those whiffs and those grounders, and they really come like right at that threshold at the bottom of the zone, and it comes at the expense of lots of walks. That's just kind of the way it goes. Does it make a changeup worse? Not really, because the whole premise of that as well, getting at the very bottom of the zone, is inducing weak contact, and so the best pitches for inducing weak contact, again, a function of location, being right there at the bottom of the zone, is changeups. Changeups are 20 points or even 50 points lower than a fastball, but 20 points lower than sliders and curves. And that's the equivalent of about 0.4 runs of ERA. And that's for the average pitcher, excuse me. That's a huge deal. 0.4 off your ERA for being a changeup guy instead of a curve slider guy. Unfortunately, increasing your walk rate gives back a lot of those gains. So there's just kind of this like give and take, push pull of like, are you a changeup guy? Are you a slider guy? Are you a curve guy? Whatever. Like, neither is necessarily better than the other as long as you're throwing your pitch to the best of your ability to maximize its potential. Because a guy like Luis Castillo does not have bad command. Dallas Keuchel does not have bad command. Sonny Gray does not have bad command. Patrick Sandoval, who I'm all in on this year, does not have bad command. These are guys who are sinker, changeup guys, feasting on the bottom of the zone. It comes with its price, but these are the guys who are inducing weak contact. That's kind of like the Kyle Hendricks blueprint too, of just kind of like chewing, nibbling at the corners of the zone with a very slow fastball and a very slow changeup. Those are like, that's why he succeeds. And it's very reasonable to assume that he's going to bounce back purely by virtue of, of pristine command, and also just the absolute absurd slowness of the pitches that he throws. It's just impossible to generate EV off of pitches like that. We'll get to that. So anyway, sliders and curves kind of the same. But getting to it, you have a much bigger band of effectiveness for sliders, and curves, not at all. I mean, if you're hanging a curve, just don't hang your curve. How about that? Because if you are more than half a foot above the bottom of the zone and you're hanging a curve, no matter how steep, you're probably going to get crushed. I'm trying to think of that one pitch, the Jorge Soler pitch. That's probably a pitch you don't want to hang, and we saw why. So anyway, getting back to this blob, and I'm running out of time. I got private chat, four comments in my private chat. Casey Bubba is next. Oh, hey Bubba. So I'm gonna steal a little bit of your time, guys, but we have curveball land down here, and obviously seeing that steep curveballs are better. But really, it's not about steep curveballs as much as it's just living low in the zone. And in fact, everything low in the zone that is a breaking ball or a curveball, this is this whole segment right here. That's where you want to live. It really doesn't matter if it's a changeup, a curveball, or a slider. Just don't hang it. Just don't hang it. Just throw it at the bottom of the zone. That's the way you're going to get away with this. If it's going to come with a higher walk rate, so be it. I think that's probably something that gets lost in the shuffle here, is that you're not sacrificing command if you have a higher walk rate. In fact, it's showing here, and this is weighting everything properly, weighting the value of strikeouts and walks and contact quality. You're better off being in the bottom of the zone. You're better off having more walks and trading that in for much weaker contact. So in conclusion, good flat fastballs at the top of the zone, good steep sinkers at the bottom of the zone, good curved sliders and changeups at the bottom of the zone. Doesn't matter if they're steep, just throw them there. Bad fastballs, don't put them in the middle of the zone. Don't have them be not steep or flat. Uh, don't don't do what Herman Marquez does, and just don't hang them. Just don't hang them. So again, you can achieve good outcomes with bad pitches. You just need to rely more heavily on location. With better pitch shapes, you can rely less on location. That is your margin for error, which has become much wider for you. The Jacob Degrom margin for error, the Freddie Peralta margin for error, the Justin Verlander margin for error. Again, in the baseball biz, someone might call this stuff. Maybe this isn't stuff, but stuff is certainly a differentiator. So that's important. But getting back to fantasy baseball, because that's what I'm here for. I love fantasy baseball. I use this for fantasy baseball. I've been using VAA a lot in my preseason research. We can and should use it to understand how pitches work, and it is a really helpful way to kind of aggregate a bunch of different metrics at once. Like we have velocity and pitch height and release point and movement. It's one thing to look at all those separately and be like, okay, this changed, but also this changed. And this part changed, and like I can't really tell which one of those things contributes to why this pitch got better or worse. But if you look at VAA, especially VAA above average, which now has 4 A's, VAAA, VAAAA. God, I hate myself. You can kind of capture a lot of those effects all at once, and I really like that. And I don't want to reduce it down to just looking at VAAA. Because that is too reductive. That's bad. That's bad form. If you're only looking at one metric to evaluate a pitch, don't do that. But it is very helpful as shorthand because, again, it is aggregating and naturally interacting a bunch of different metrics at once. It can tell us a lot with very little. And this is the meat. This is the meat. Getting into the four-seamer. Nick, do I still have time? Can I take like 2 more minutes? I'm going to do it. I look like Pete Alonso shirtless if Alonso had Oh, thank you, Yancy. Yes, BDE. Herman Marquez's four-seamer is bad. Shane Bieber's four-seamer four-shape isn't ideal either. Hence, prone to hard contact that evidently only I care about. Only I care about the fact that Shane Bieber is giving up hard contact. People think that's a fluke, and I'm here to show you that it's not a fluke or like an accident or whatever. It actually doesn't really matter because he's so good that the hard contact doesn't really affect him. But if you're looking at ERA estimators, someone like Shane Bieber is going to underperform them because they're assuming that he is closer to average in terms of the contact he allows. That's fundamentally untrue for him because he is allowing harder contact because of the poor shape of his fastball. The poor shape of his fastball helps set up his curve and slider. So don't get me wrong, like where he's throwing that pitch is making those two breaking balls filthy. Like it's a tunneling thing or a sequencing thing or whatever you want to call it. This is a known trade-off that he is making. He has thought about this, and his pitching coaches have thought about this clearly because he is getting whiffs like absolutely crazy, going absolutely ham, getting whiffs on these breaking pitches. But it is coming at the cost of his fastball getting smoked. Going back to our watermelon. Here's Jacob Degrom's fastball. This is like a heat map. Okay, you can see that it is mostly green. The part where he throws his fastball the most isn't perfectly flat. It is kind of up in the zone, not middle, but right in that little green patch just outside the red. That is what a flat fastball can do for you. You can throw it down the middle and you can escape danger. Whereas if you are Shane Bieber, you are mostly living in the red. And for him, he throws his fastball lower in the zone because it sets up his secondaries below the zone. And as I've discussed ad nauseum here, that's where the whiffs are found. So he throws his fastball lower. It is a big red patch where most of his fastballs are thrown. And that is bad for ERA. It's bad. His breaking balls are all down here. Super green. Super green. But his fastball is very red. And so does that make him volatile? I guess. I mean, he's probably going to have a couple of games where he gets lit up, but we all do. We all get lit up. So he's probably still an ace. I just think if I'm talking about true number ones, and he's not being treated like that this year, I just can't give him that benefit of the doubt because he is someone who actually errs on the side of too much hard contact. And then you have Herman Marquez, who's just in a league of his own in terms of throwing bad fastballs in bad places. I mean, that's people say it's Coors, and I tell you it's not Coors. He is going to struggle to succeed away from Coors, and that's why we saw his away ERA so high this year, is because this is not just a Coors thing. Coors certainly does not help. But if you're throwing a poorly shaped fastball in bad parts of the zone, what are you going to do? I mean, you're going to get lit up. And he has no room for error with that pitch. I mean, he's got to thread the needle, and he typically does not do it. I'm just looking over right now. I see Giolito. I'm not talking about Giolito, but I actually don't know what his fastball looks like here. But he does a really good job of suppressing hard contact. I would bet that it is a flatness thing, more location than flatness, but I bet he's closer to like more like right in between these two is where Giolito is going to be. So he's got some pockets of green where the flatness of his fastball is being effective. He also just has really good secondaries. He's a really good pitcher, and I'd rather have him than Shane Bieber, but that's neither here nor there. Boom. That's just the facts. Those are 3 fastballs side by side. So we can talk about it forever. And I'm actually going to skip this because I don't have time. Sorry. We're going to get through it. But if you want to look at vertical approach angle, again, it's not everything, but it can be many things. It's on my pitch leaderboard. If you haven't heard of the pitch leaderboard, Google it, I suppose. I'm going to try to figure out a way to distribute this PowerPoint to everyone, so you can click on these links, and that way you don't have to worry about it. I'll try to put it on my Twitter account. It's at Dolph Haldhagen. I'm actually not going to spell that for you, so good luck finding it. But yeah, again, VAA isn't everything. It can be many things. All the evidence here is deliberately reductive, but that's just kind of like where we have to start sometimes in terms of understanding how all these things work. So thanks. Thanks, Nick, for inviting me. Thanks for tolerating my human rain delay. Thanks, Harry Pavlidis at Baseball Prospectus for his help originally in kind of steering me toward the vertical approach angle stuff. Don't Google me because you're just going to find the soccer player. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Hi, Nick.
Thank you so much, Alex. That was awesome. I have
my throat
one
hurts.
question.
Yeah, what's up?
Where can we find the formula for VAA?
Okay, so I have it. I don't know if it's like a secret. It's physics. It's like it's a thing. Like it just everyone should. I should talk to Harry and see if it's like okay to post it, because I don't know if it's like. Yeah, I don't know if it's like proprietary.
So, I mean,
it's
obviously, it's a very convincing argument, like understanding of Marquez's.
I just made all the numbers up.
Yeah, there you go. But it's it's something that should be shared more. So it's something I would love to look into.
Well, I definitely have it on my pitch leaderboard, and if it's okay to share the formula, then I'll send it to you, and you can pop it up on the pitcher list leaderboard, and you we'll see what we can render mine obsolete.
But anyway, Alex, thanks so much. I remember last year it was Alex Chamberlain does a presentation without a shirt on. It took a full year for us to get that, but we got it finally. And we're also much better for it. But yeah, these guys have been so kind. I got to get you off now.
Okay,
thanks so much, man.
Thanks. Sorry for the delay.
It's all good. All right, guys, that was Alex